Hello, this is Bob Lamkin, ACE Faculty Liaison for Pennsylvania Highlands Community College, Cultural Studies and History, and I'm here to talk about issues regarding pedagogy and assessment. In regard to the assessment, the general term paper that many folks opt to submit for an assessment has been generally the traditional informative paper. What I would like to alert the liaisons to is a different type of paper that I have found majority of students favor this over the traditional type of informative paper. And this is a paper I call the slice of life paper. It's good for history and Western civilization papers if you're teaching those courses. And basically what I do there, how I shape that paper is the traditional information is there. The student has to research the history, but along with that, they're doing creative writing. There's creative fiction. For instance, a topic for U.S. History 2, the teenager in 1972. And on the syllabus, I provide an example for students to be able to look at that. I have a student's work that I provide, and they're able to use that as an illustration on how to do the paper. But basically, and what I tell the students is the historical research is like the Christmas tree. The creative fiction, that's the ornaments that you place on the tree. I'm not going to go over the entire paper guideline. A lot of this is kind of overlaps into what you would already do with a traditional paper. But some of the things I'd like to highlight, basically how to do it. Overall, the slice of life paper, you want to make sure the slice of life makes sense. For instance, you cannot be an early settler in 1607 Jamestown and be a slave abolitionist. Also, you remember to place your life in the correct context of the time period. For example, you cannot be on the Mayflower and write about the Salem witch trials or the Trail of Tears. Moreover, this type of paper, the slice of life paper, cannot use weapons, technology, or anything else that was discovered or invented after its time frame, right? For instance, internet, jet planes, cars, machine guns, everything has to be historically accurate. And you need to address all the points that will be addressed in the syllabus. But you're free to do that. The student's free to do that in their own manner, maps and drawings. Let me just give you an example of how to do this. Again, I alluded to the topic of a teenager in the summer of 1972. And this was a topic that is part of the U.S. History 2 course. And a teenager in 72, this student wrote, and this is creative fiction, Audrey Van Dams spotted Ricky and I out on the boardwalk that sunny day. She just happened to be with the foxiest girl in the 7th grade, Tina Singer. Now I realize, foxiest girl, foxy is one of the stupidest adjectives known to mankind. But that is a word that was used back in the late 60s, early 70s for individuals who found someone else attractive. And they sourced this through a slang book of that time period. The student went on, "My, did my heart skip a beat when Tina told me that I would be so cute if I would just take care of myself a little better. As she said this, she placed a peace sticker on my neck." If you know anything about 1972, that time period, that was a very popular symbol. And they sourced that. "Home run," Ricky whispered as we strolled down the boardwalk. "That may have made my summer." It was the summer of 1972, and all was right with the world. Well, for the exception of Ricky's Baltimore Orioles cap. How I wanted my Oakland A's to get a rematch with them, and it could happen. My guys were up in sailing, 5 games up in the American League West, 3 weeks into June. The Orioles were in a seesaw battle with the Tigers over an Eastern Division. And they sourced this through baseballreference.com. I checked this out, and they got it to a T. But as much as the American League standing consumed me, I was not going to let it ruin this day. Here we were, strolling down the boardwalk. I had 2 fishing poles and Ricky a minnow net and a transistor radio. That was a source of entertainment. The tool of our entertainment back during that time period, I remember this as well, transistor radios. Ricky kept flipping the radio dials between WFIL and WABC. We had heard Alice Cooper's School's Out twice already. School's out for summer. Yes, give me some more, I yelled. I looked that up. Alice Cooper, School's Out was a big hit that summer. So you kind of get the picture a little bit here, I'm sure. The news came on at the top of the hour. I heard the anchorman say something about linebacker 1 taking it to the Viet Cong and all but stopping the communists' spring offensive in South Vietnam. That Nixon began a bombing campaign in the North, and something about the flow of the war turning its tide. Yeah, the world was all right. Vietnam War was full steam ahead during that time period. And teaching the Vietnam War for years, I know without looking it up that the linebacker 1 was an air campaign that summer. So they're using as I say, the Christmas tree of history with the creative fiction, the ornaments of the creative fiction around the tree. And as I've said, generally this has been a lot more popular of a way to do the term papers over the years. Now, one of the things I do is and you may do this as well, but this is imperative with this type of paper. I require a rough draft, and I realize that's more work for us as teachers. But here's the thing with the rough drafts with this type of paper: it provides a checklist. I provide a checklist on the guidelines, on the paper guidelines, which I have posted for you folks, and it basically, basic instructions, the format, and the structure. So that way, once the papers are handed in, I can check off what is needed. And like if they're a little weak on some of those ornaments there, like concerns and pleasures, daily routine items, which are weighted a little bit heavier for me, I can alert the student to that. And it's kind of a win-win in the end, because although it's a little more work, by having the checklist there, 90% of my students over the years get 90 to 100s on the paper. And considering I weight it at 25% of the grade, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I'll leave the checklist and the items on the page that you can look at. And of course, you're free to maybe weight those things as you see fit, or maybe take some things out, add some things. That's entirely up to you. But I think in regard to how to do the paper, I think that about covers it. Everything else on here that you're going to see is basically how to cite, and the page length. I generally do about 5 to 6 pages on this. If you want to do a little more or a little less, that's entirely up to you. How to compile information, and the font, and so forth. I generally give the students a small choice, MLA or Chicago. That's up to you, of course, as well, too, if you want to narrow that down to just one thing, or a couple of more ways to do that. But so that's probably it as far as the paper goes. And if you have any questions about that, you could don't hesitate to contact me, R. Lamkin at pennhighlands.edu. So hopefully it turns out to be very successful for you. I'm sure it will be, and happy teaching and research.